Well, hello, friends and fellow pioneers. Today I'm joining you from a different part of the property. We've had some crazy storms and different things, and something new for today. I am here with Wendy Bergin. I'm so excited to bring her story to you so that you can be inspired and empowered to get started
I
right
am
now.
here with Wendy Bergin.
So, Wendy, tell us what caused you, what inspired you, and what has happened in your life to get you to this point where you have this blog for call this blog where you help people with preparedness and this private group. Tell us what got you to
This blog where you help people with preparedness. With preparedness.
Mic is mute. Okay, here we go. We got a little technical difficulty. Well, thank you so much, Aurora, for having me, first of all, for the opportunity to come on.
We got a little technical difficulty. Well, thank you so much, Aurora, for having me, first of all.
I'm sorry. I think
For the
my thing is
opportunity
messing
to
up.
come on. We got a little technical difficulty. Well, thank you so much, Aurora, for having me, first of all.
Hey, y'all, we're having a little bit of a difficulty with the sound, and we were not aware of that. I kind of just only started happening when we started doing the streaming, so I'm not really sure what happened. So, Wendy, tell me if do you have some ear? Sorry, y'all, to be doing. Wendy's gonna go ahead and get her earbuds. And while she does that, I'm going to go ahead and show you her. She'll be right back. I'm going to show you her website. Okay. This is what inspired me to bring her on. So she had this, she posted where we connected on Facebook. I'm temporarily on Facebook for a project right now. And we connected because of some entrepreneur groups that we're part of, and I saw her post about 4 ways where she shared 4 ways to start prepping for free. And so I wanted to bring her on and let her share her story of preparedness. And she's actually in the process of moving right now, and it's kind of a crazy time, but she graciously agreed to do this live stream with us before the move and while all the changes are happening. And so I hope she can find her earmuffs. And this kind of crazy. Really, we don't normally have a problem after the live stream starts. Just we honestly have had more technical difficulties this week. I've been doing this for at least a year and just crazy stuff. But Joyful Prep is her blog. And I wanted to let you know that we have posted 2 links on the descriptions on YouTube. Okay, the descriptions and all the links are on YouTube. If you're watching this live stream somewhere else, just hop on to YouTube and find the live stream going on right now and subscribe for the notification so you can know when we go live. But so she's shared that there are some things that you can start doing in your journey to prepare. And this is something that she and I are going to discuss when she comes back on. She also has a private group called Prepare Every Needful Thing. And we have the link to that in the description so that you can join her group if you would like. And, one thing that's true about this season in life is all the people that are coming together with so many different backgrounds, but with one common goal, and that is to really go back to some ancient paths and see how people before us were able to survive and thrive without electricity or without the refrigeration, and with having to prepare ahead season or a year, or several seasons ahead. And so she has a lot of resources here and some conversation, and her group is still fairly small, that you can get a lot more interaction with Wendy if that is of interest to you, to ask questions. Again, she's in the middle of a move right now, so don't expect her to be too present there. Okay, are you back, Wendy? Let's see.
Yep.
Much better?
Yeah, Thankfully, I have a husband who knows these things.
Yes. So let me make that smaller, and I'm actually going to go ahead and add you back in, remove this, and so where we were, so just to recap, welcome everybody. Wendy is the founder, the writer of the Joyful Prep blog, and she's going to share with us her story of how she started preparing and where she's at right now, with her personal story of where she's at, and also where she's at with helping other people who are getting started. So Wendy, I'll let you just share with us that kind of where you started and what got you to where you are right now, and then I'll come back.
Great. Again, I'll try this again. Thank you so much, Aurora, for having me on, reaching out to me, and encouraging this conversation. So my story, as I call myself the Joyful Prepper, it actually starts with my grandparents. Back in the early 1900s, my grandparents got together, and their church leaders, this was in 1939, and their church leaders suggested, really encouraged them, that they needed to put up a 2-year supply of food and supplies. And and so they did. They started working on this, and my grandfather in his journal says, I decided to put the leaders to the test. And so he was a landscaper. Back then, it was called a nurseryman. He took down trees and all the things that you do in landscaping. And so he put up tires and ropes and chains and anything he could think of that would help keep his business running for 2 years. And meanwhile, my grandmother and my great-grandmother, my grandfather's mother, they put up 1,800 jars of food over this time period. It didn't happen just one summer, I'm sure, and it always amazes me to think of these women in the heat of Virginia, Central Virginia, and wood stoves and no air conditioning. Oh, I don't know if I'm as strong as they are. And the long story short was, it wasn't but 2 years later that the United States got involved in World War II. And the blessing of my grandparents following the counsel of their church leaders was that my grandfather was the only landscaper to stay in business during that time because he had all the supplies up. And my grandparents never needed to use one of their ration stamps that they were, given back then, because they had all these canned vegetables and they grew gardens and they knew how to take care of themselves. I had one person one time, I was teaching this class and I had told this story, and she goes, oh my goodness, you have preparedness in your DNA. I think I'm right. She's right. So my dad that's my dad's parents, and he was raised with that mindset. My mom grew up in Idaho in a little teeny tiny town called Sugar City, and she was the youngest of 9 children, and they were not very well off. And her mother worked hard. They always had this huge garden. They had their own cattle, so they milked their own cows. My mom hated that. They had this dark root cellar. She said it was very scary going down in the root cellar, but they kept their potatoes and all the canned food. My grandmother would take apart the flour sacks and make food. She would take my grandfather's old clothes that were kind of worn out for him, and she would repurpose them, and she would make them smaller to put on her children. And so my mom comes from exactly the same kind of background as my dad, different but the same as far as mindset is concerned. And so that's how I was raised. My mom canned everything. She grew a huge garden. In the summertime, my dad would wake us up in the summertime when teenagers and children are supposed to not have to get up early. He would wake us up at 7 o'clock in the morning so that we could go out to the garden and help mom do all the things that are necessary to take care of a garden. And I remember kind of yelling up to whoever was not listening or who was listening, saying, I will never have a garden when I grow up. I remember saying that. And now I teach gardening. I actually wrote a container gardening course this last spring to help other people. So my parents raised me with the same mindset. My mom canned what she raised, and I learned that mindset from her. She sewed many of our clothes, 2 of my prom dresses. And my dad, he was always hardworking. He was always thinking outside of the box about how to be prepared. And he is a great learner, and he taught me how to be grateful. My first step into my own journey was when I was home with my parents. I was a teenager, and we had wild blackberry bushes growing along the side of a gravel road that we lived down. And I thought, I'm gonna pick those blackberries. I'm gonna make blackberry jam. I'd never done it before. Picked all the blackberries, brought them home. My mom had the jars and lids and rings, and she had the pectin and the sugar. But I read the directions and I canned. I'm sure she guided me a little bit. I don't remember that because I just think I want all that praise myself. But I canned blackberry jam all by myself. And so I learned to love foraging for wild edibles and then preserving food. So that was kind of the beginning of my personal journey. But really my journey starts with my grandparents, for whom I'm very, very thankful. So we fast forward, I finally get married. And my husband and I, we both worked for the same man whose wife was from Italy. Well, I think she still is from Italy, but she's from Italy. And she taught me how to make Italian spaghetti sauce, to make tomato sauce. And we live here in South Jersey, where plum tomatoes, the Romas, these sauce tomatoes are just everywhere, and they're delicious. And so Sam, my husband, and I, we bought some canning jars. I think we bought 12 pint jars, and we made our own sauce, and we canned spaghetti sauce. That was the beginning. I had my blackberries, I had my mom's wonderful example, and then I had the spaghetti sauce, and then I was off to the races after that. I started canning like everything, but I've always been interested in all these different ways to do it yourself. I love to make my own natural remedies, whether it's elderberry syrup or fire cider or infused oils to then make my own salves and ointments. I grow my own garden to make my own, well, I don't make the herbs, but grow the herbs to then use in these. All of these things come together. And I love the idea that we can go to the grocery store and find natural medicine there in onions and garlic and lemon, different things like that. So I am fascinated with that as well. Making your own, healing yourself, being as self-reliant as possible. Now, to me, the definition of self-reliance is knowing what you can do and doing as much as you can do, but also knowing that you have a community of people to whom you can go for the help for things that you don't know how to do. I think that's just as important as trying to do it all yourself. Well, I think it's almost more important. I don't know how to, well, for an example, if you don't know how to filter water, well, who can you go to learn how to do that? You find a mentor. That's why I think Facebook groups are fantastic, because you can find a community, a synergy with other people and their talent, skills, experience, and understanding. And they come from all over the world. So as I've been on this journey to teach other people how to become more prepared, it dawned on me that I am a home ec teacher for adults. They got rid of the home ec programs in schools. I don't know how many years ago. I'm actually old enough to remember being in home ec, but they got rid of it. And so I'm on this quest to teach adults how to do the things that our ancestors just grew up knowing how to do. So as far as being the joyful prepper, I used to motivate people to prepare. I used to motivate them with fear. We only have this much time, whatever it is, world events, catastrophic this or that, political. And then I had a friend say to me, she goes, "Why are you so doomsday all the time?" And I thought, I'm not. I really didn't think I was. And as I took that in, I realized that I was motivating people in fear. And I'm not that girl. I want to motivate people in joy with the idea that you can do it. You can do it yourself. And I want to be there to guide you. But then the best part of being prepared, self-reliant, whatever words you want to use, is that when you're confident in your skills and in your storage and whatever it is that you're doing, when you're confident there and you feel safe, when you feel safe there, then you have the ability to go out and serve other people. And to me, that is the highest level of preparedness you can meet, is to be able to lift other people's burden, whether it's you teach them a skill, whether it's that you deliver food to them or help them learn something, or be able to serve them in whatever manner that they need. You and yours are secure, safe, and confident at home. So you then can go out. And to me, that is what joy is. And so I became the joyful prepper. And that's who I am today.
Awesome. This has been really fun. When you said home ec for adults, home ec teacher for adults, it's just, it's true. It's true. And, and it is hard to combine the awareness of what time it is. We just talk about like what time it is in the world, what time it is in history, right?
Mm-hmm.
For those of us who have read the back of the book, we are understanding there's not much time left, and we don't want to make fear-based choices.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But because of our faith and knowing that, things are going to get more difficult, and the love of how things go, they go from order to chaos. And, being able, like, I'm from Venezuela, and I just keep telling people, I know it's unimaginable. I know it seems inconceivable.
Right.
But it's coming to a city near you, and it's going to be worse than what you imagine. And it's going to be worse than what we went through in Venezuela.
Right.
The people went through in Venezuela. So, there's that, like you were talking about, that responsibility to carry on in the best, most joyful and grateful position we can be in. At the same time, it's sobering what we're preparing for. And like you said, one of the things that one of our mentors shared that I learned from him, his name is Craig Hill, and it's like, you cannot give what you do not have.
That's right.
So if you are not confident, like what you said, if you're not confident, you can't be joyful.
You can't. And you cannot serve people with fear in your heart. You cannot. You cannot feed from an empty shelf. You cannot give money from an empty purse. You can't teach if you're not educated, and you certainly can't give spiritually if you are not spiritual.
Right. And so thank you for sharing your story. And I think, I've noticed a lot of our students, they had grandparents And if you're listening today, maybe that resonates with you, that we had grandparents, like my grandmother knew the moon cycles. Like
Mhm.
she never, that I know of, I don't think she bought plants. She
Wow.
would bring her sticks, like a cutting.
Yeah.
And I call it stick because it's translating from Spanish, but it was a cutting.
Yeah.
And so she knew how to put it. She loved roses, but she knew how to put it in the ground and when it would do its thing. And
That's
I've
awesome.
just always been so fascinated with knowing the seasons, the moon cycles, and things like that. Because the old farmers knew this stuff, and
Right.
the planets in the heavens, and they're there for seasons and for us to understand. But it's been lost, and so
Yes.
it's kind of bringing that from the past and grabbing and reclaiming those ancient paths of our ancestors.
Yeah.
It's something
Beautiful.
that I think a lot of us um, in the space of preparedness, of homesteading, we want to be able to understand those blessings in nature, the signs, and how to really take advantage of the herbs. Her favorite herb was, in Spanish, it's called hierba buena because it's good herb, but in English, I think it's spearmint.
Oh, okay.
And that was her favorite because it had so many things that it could
Mhm.
cure,
Yeah.
help. I know the word cure is illegal,
Healing. Healing.
that it, things that it can make better, improve
Yeah. Yeah.
situations permanently. um, so thank you for sharing that. A lot of the times it's a legacy that was implanted at us, and we want to
Yeah.
carry it on. So let's talk about just this industry of, there's homesteading, there's gardening, there's the survivalists,
Mhm.
preparedness, and all of these things. And just an umbrella, we all overlap a little bit here, a little bit
Right.
there. But if there was anything that you could change, that you see, if there's something that could be better, or that you see is a big problem, let's name some elephants in the room. What do you see is going on that's not going in
Yeah.
the
Well, I definitely think that a couple of things. One in particular is people don't seem to want to take responsibility for their own survival. I don't mean extreme survival type things, but even just having extra food in the house. To me, that's survival. It's so easy to run out to McDonald's or go out to eat, and I do that often, not McDonald's, but other things, and we do that quite often. But what I think is disconcerting to me is how many people, when they find out kind of what I do, what my, that you need to have food in your house, you need to know skills. People will often say, "Oh, if anything happens, I'm going to come to your house." And I don't take offense at that, but I'm always in awe that somebody would project their safety and survival onto me because they're unwilling to spend the money, spend the time, make the effort to do it for themselves. I get they're probably a little overwhelmed. And honestly, buying toilet paper and canning tomato sauce, it's not super sexy or anything like that. It's just a way of life. But when things happen, for instance, we were showing our house recently, and that's when Hurricane Ida came up through New Jersey and actually dumped a whole bunch of rain on us. And we had severe damage by tornadoes, thankfully, right in my town. Thankfully, we were spared. But somebody was actually in our home and had seen all our preps down in our basement. And when they went outside, it was raining and the weather and everything. And they're like, "Oh my goodness, well, we're in the right house. If anything happens, we need to find out where they're moving so we can follow them." I was like, "Well, that's not how this works." But I think people need to learn how to take responsibility for their own survival, for their own comfort, and figure this out rather than always projecting onto people who are homesteaders, prepared, survival, whoever you are, instead of projecting onto us that we need to take care of them. I already have 7 kids. I don't need to take on more people. And I guess did that turn into a pet peeve? I think it just might have.
I asked for it. It's not just a pet peeve of just what's going on. So I think, but do you think that the industry and the things that are out there, because maybe let's talk about one of mine that I think a lot of things are in entertainment, and I do not provide any entertainment on our channel.
Right.
I interview people that have made an impact in our life, or that I feel like have something good to offer, but we don't really do a lot of show off, like those kind of things. I think it's just like, get yourself in the place where you need to be.
Yeah.
Here. That's the most important thing. And that's what we really, and I guess maybe, I'm trying to, put my time and my effort where my mouth is that I think there's a big problem with the eye candy and all of that. And then people are just entertained, and they're not. I mean, some people are inspired. I realize that. And some people do that. But real life is not show and tell all the time. There's a lot of struggles that we, as people in homesteading or pioneers, are dealing with. And that's a lot of it. That is the chunk of it. And that's what produces fruit, is the private victories. And so that is, what I try to amplify and highlight, is being able to have a lot more private victories, especially before starting on a pioneering journey, because it doesn't, it is very rewarding, but it doesn't get easier. You just pick your battles because you are pioneering. It's like I mean, there's nothing there's nothing even easy that comes, nothing flowery that comes to mind when you think about pioneering, the word pioneering itself.
Oh yeah, I know that was grueling to be a pioneer. And thankfully we have air conditioning right now, so I'm thankful for that I get to do a lot of my pioneering in an air conditioned home. But one of the things that I do find, especially with women who decide that they want to take this journey, it's not so much they need to have their hands held, but they do need praise. I have had many women come to me and they'll say, Wendi, I just put up so many gallons of water because you said so in your blog post about winter preps and getting prepared for winter. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so good. Good for you. They want a little cheerleader. They want a little praise, because especially as women / mothers, we do a lot of stuff without any praise. And we sign up for that. But it's always nice to have somebody pat you on the back, give you a high five, a little cheer of some sort. And I think as women, mothers in this industry or lifestyle or journey, that we need to be helpful to one another and build each other up that way. It doesn't matter if they made one loaf of bread and it was rock hard. At least they made the attempt to make the bread, to figure it out. Because really, preparing, self-reliance, it's an experiment all the way, really just like anything else. But every little bit you can learn, every secret you can figure out that works for you, you're going to be that much more confident in your efforts to serve other people. And so I would say little bits of praise, encourage people. There's no room for discouragement. There's no room for other people discouraging other people who are trying to do this. There's only room for encouragement. And I think that's the other thing, is that we need to encourage one another to learn these valuable skills.
No, I totally agree. And I think that another thing that if anything could be different than what I was saying about the show and tell, is like that a lot of times it's, for example, if there's somebody that baked 12 loaves of bread in a sun oven, like one day with their wheat that they did on a hand crank mill or whatever.
Yeah.
That's great, but to get to that point is a big process.
Yes.
And a lot of times, if we only look at the fruit, we don't realize like all of the things that tree had to do to get
To
there.
nurture it. Yeah.
Right. And so
Plant the seed, right, but you have to nurture what you're trying to get to. You're
right.
right.
And so to not compare, like you said, cheer each other on, but also cheer yourself on, because in
Yep.
pioneering, you're gonna have to be your best advocate. I mean, if
Yes.
nobody else is cheering you on, and if everybody thinks you have lost your mind, you can be like, you know what? 10 years ago, I didn't even. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, 10 years ago, I had never been camping, and
Wow.
then that all just came to a halt because
Wow.
I was on raw land with nothing, no utilities, nothing.
That's crazy.
And so, you know, I had nothing to show for it other than what I say is the courage to be fearless,
Yeah.
to not have to follow somebody else. We didn't have mentors at the time. We weren't following anyone at the time. I tell people I didn't know what preppers were. We really don't. I mean, we don't consider ourselves preppers, but we're pioneers,
Yeah.
and just are a blend of like homesteaders and kind of survivalists, and
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. But the thing is that, like you were talking about, like, have the grace to share and cheer other people on. But if you don't have it, you have to keep moving forward.
Right.
Even if that person, like, even if you're not on Facebook and you don't get to join Wendy's group and you don't have stuff, there might be times when there may not be internet, or
Right.
you may not have electricity, to have somebody cheer you on. And those private victories, that's what matters. And that's what, what we want to encourage you to do. And that really is the inspiration for this whole interview, is that there's so much you can do on you, work on you.
Yes. Yes.
And Wendy and I have both invested many months and many thousands of dollars on ourselves to get ourselves in a position to where we can serve others, to where we can grow. And we paid a lot to do things that didn't cost any extra, right?
Yeah.
Just to have the wisdom and the advice on what to do. But what you do privately doesn't really, it's not like you pay to be with yourself. You have those, intimate moments. You're not paying yourself like this hourly rate, right? But it's like an investment of your attention and your focus to work on those things, to make those priorities, to just own, like you were talking about, take ownership of what's important to you, because in the end, that's what you're going to be responsible for. Is, God created you, and you're going to be responsible for what you did with your life. What did you do with it? And nobody else can do that for you.
That's right.
And so that is the inspiration for Wendy and I to have this conversation and to record it, is to inspire you. There's so much you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I am bringing you, and Wendy's bringing you, some of the best advice on what you can do. And we're going to get onto that. And if you're watching on the live stream right now and you have any questions for Wendy or for me about this topic, feel free to make a comment on YouTube so that we can see it, and we'll get to it in just a moment. So Wendy, let's talk about the article, because it really made me want to have this conversation. So let's talk about this. So you called it 4 ways to start prepping for free.
Yeah.
Now, this article was not free for you to produce. So let's just start off with Wendy, has invested quite a bit to get to this point. Mm-hmm. So it's free to you, but we are investing in you to bring you this wisdom. Okay.
Yeah.
So at no additional cost to you who are watching. So let's talk about the first one is, well, why don't you walk us through it and I'll navigate.
So the first one is just to think. You have a brain. I don't think the critical thinking skills really aren't being taught these days. So you have to think. Sit down. You can use a computer if that's the best, Or you can just, I like pen and paper still. That's just my way I think out loud on a piece of paper. And dump out of your head, where do you live? What kind of a location, what kind of natural disasters would happen at your house, could happen there? We live in New Jersey, and so we get hurricanes here and there. We just got some tornadoes. We get winter weather. And so I'm going to start with the scenario that is most likely to happen regularly. So I would say probably summertime, it's the hurricanes, we get some bad thunderstorms, and the winter is ice and snow. And so I'm going to start figuring out what things do I need for myself and my family that will help me through those kinds of situations. It's just it's a thinking process, because if you don't know where to start, then where are you going? I mean, it's not gonna, you can grab all these things that all the preppers tell you to get, but unless you know what the purpose of those things are and when you could possibly use them, they're still gonna give you, it'll be a good thing, but let's be a little bit more deliberate. And that's free. Your brain is free. Your paper usually is free because you have it in your house.
Right.
So you click on what can you do? That's what people, they come to me and they ask me, well, where do I start? Start where you are. Just start right where you are. Think about what you have. Think about the skills that you already have. Are you a good gardener? Is that something that just comes naturally to you? Because it doesn't for me. Thankfully, my dad made me get up early in the morning and learn how to garden, but it's not a natural thing. But there are things, every one of us has a genius or more, and start there. So think what you can do, think about what you can afford right now. And if you need to start saving money, then start saving money for the things that you feel like you need to add to what you have. Do you have blankets in your house? Are they extra? Then set those aside for winter weather or some other preparedness need. You want to go to number 2?
Yeah, and I want to add to that I had the opportunity yesterday or the day before. Actually, I'm getting my days running together a little bit, but I had the opportunity to interview former governor of Colorado, and he has this organization called teamlaw.net that helps people to start learning and understanding law. And the way they have it structured is that people learn and do the things themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was talking about how important it is, and this has to do with law. Just think about how important it is for you to understand the law and not letting other people take care of that for you, because when there comes a time that you may not have all those people what if you don't have your phone there or that person there that you've relied on for all those instances and situations? So they won't do it. They will only coach people to learn how to do it. And so that's their model. And I love that you said that if for example, we do the thinking for you, which we don't in our mentorship, it's a high-end intensive mentorship, and we do not do the thinking for them. It is not a one size fits all. We give people the framework to do set up the foundation, just like civil engineering. We just figure out like how tall is the building going to be or how wide, and then we make sure that it has what it needs to stand, right? And to have a good foundation. With legal matters, you need to know where to stand if that's important to you. So if the well-being of your family, and again, we're not fear-mongering, but if you don't want to be uncomfortable, if you like your comfort, if you like eating, if you like yeah, like Wendy was talking about air conditioning. We've in our last 10 years, there were years we did not have it, and I did say years with an S. So and we're in Texas, okay? So there are things that you plan and prepare for. Well, for example, and I just want to sit here for a minute and just talk about, for example, a lot of times people just want to buy a house that's already made. Well, Jason and I have, and in our investing in our vision, like you were talking about, where are you going to go? Our vision is to create communities where the structures, the building, the shelter are not dependent or very they have minimal requirements, let's say, for heating and cooling. Well, where do you make that investment?
Right.
Before you build it.
Right. Right.
After you build it, to retrofit a home that is stick built and with the way, I can't even remember. We were talking about pet peeves. What is that stuff called? Because I've never used it in building, but the boards that people build with, oh my goodness, it just escaped me. So we build our walls. We had built some walls with wood, but I forgot.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What do people build walls with here in the United States? Can you remind me? The walls are made of
The drywall, is that the kind of thing?
that drywall. So Jason
Okay.
will not touch drywall. Why? Because if you have humidity, it's a nightmare. If you get flooded, it's a nightmare. If you have, there's so many things that could go wrong, right? So with our conviction and our vision, it's just not even, it's kind of like, for example, if you eat kosher, you don't eat pork, it's not even on your menu, right?
Right.
So
That's
for
true.
us, drywall's not kosher. We don't go there, right?
Mhm.
And we're just not going to participate in that and all of the dependency that brings, right?
Right. Mhm.
And so, like you talked about, everybody's not going to have the same conviction, the same needs on what's important to them. And if we hand them a list of what's important to us and you hand them a list of what's important to you, that's not really going to help them. If they have everything that you would have,
Right.
they would be wanting because that's not what they grew up with or
Yeah.
how they had trained themselves and practicing making those choices and then practicing living with those choices, right?
Right.
And those decisions that people make, and then they can adjust. And that's what we've been doing the last 12
Right.
years. In when we first decided to actually leave the United States for a season and all of that, we just cut the umbilical cord and just turned off the noise and got away for 2 years, and then we came back renewed. But you have to get alone with yourself and think like Wendy's talking about. It is so important and nobody else can think for you. And one of the things that we share with people from the get-go, it's kind of a requirement to enter our ecosystem, is that you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional. And we teach 12 pillars of producing freedom. And we just say, these are things that show up in your life, goods and services that you partake in.
Right.
And if you're not intentional about how that's going to happen in your life, somebody's going to else is going to be intentional for you. For example, if you're out in the middle of the night, you're traveling late or something, and you didn't pack a snack, or you didn't pack water, or you didn't pack whatever you felt like you might need.
Right.
You're dependent on who was willing to have a gas station or some kind of convenience store open at midnight.
Right.
And you're just at the mercy of what they decided that they would sell you and for how much.
Right. Right.
You don't get to have choices.
Right.
And we had the dark winter here in Texas. Okay, and this is something that we have taught many people. Very few hotels were open for those people that were escaping their homes, who had like water pipes break, and it was a disaster. Okay, it was a terrible time here in Central Texas. Well, what I had shared with my students and became very evident during that time, I said, okay, if you have money saved in the bank, and let's say that money, two things could happen at least. One could be you don't have access to that money. Well, actually, three things. You don't have access to that money, which is worthless to you because you don't have access to it. Or that money becomes worthless. The value just devalues. And I'm telling you this from personal experience. Okay, my parents lost their pension to hyperinflation in Venezuela. You can look it up. It's one of the top most hyperinflated countries in the world. Or you have money and you have access to it, but there's nothing to buy.
That's right.
There were people who didn't have water and they couldn't buy water. There were people who would have paid for electricity, but there was no electricity because the government had rolling blackouts. There were people that had money and they would pay, they couldn't, their fireplaces, they would have to go to, I heard of a story of someone going to Home Depot and buying 2x4s to put in their fireplace.
Wow.
Okay. So what I, say is first of all, the best way to prepare ahead is to first learn how to prepare inside. You prepare inside, you're going to be a lot more resilient.
Yep.
And be your, just like your best asset. You can
Right.
either be your greatest ability or your greatest asset. And, it's really, again, a matter of investing in yourself. You can invest now in that time of just setting aside and being quiet and thinking what's important to me. Where am I? What do I have access to? Where can I start? Invest now, and you'll save yourself pain and suffering later. Or you can just save the trouble now, don't worry about it, and pay later.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what happened to a lot of people recently, again, that are not used to dealing with these winter emergencies. Okay,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so are we, again, like Wendy said, we're not trying to fearmonger you. There are foreseen crises ahead, and there are unforeseen emergencies. The more you prepare, the best of your ability for both,
Yeah.
historically, then the more joy you're going to have when you're the person who has that oxygen mask, like, on airplanes, you can breathe and you can help others. You have no business trying to help others, like you said, out of an empty shelf, because you're going to pass out or you could die because
Right.
you don't have the endurance, you don't have the means. And it's not that we don't believe that God can provide, but if we're faithful with little, much more will be given. And so, and again, like you were talking about, people saying like, I'll just come to your house, or I'll just move to your homestead. I'll just help you with what you're doing. But what are you doing with what you have?
Right.
The Bible says, like, whoever has little and doesn't take care of it, like, even that will be taken away from them. But
that's right.
The ones that multiply and have more, then even more shall be added, right? And so we want to be good stewards. And what we are sharing with you is wisdom. And to be able to understand that true wisdom is something that is not just relevant, but actionable. It's valuable and actionable. So again, we want you to take some time to digest, go to the link, find this, and spend some time. Okay. Wendy and I have many other things we could be doing with our time right now. We're investing in you, in your family, for such a time as this. Wendy could be packing. She's moving, in the middle of a big move right now. But just understand that this is a seed of value that you're going to hopefully put on the fertile ground of your heart. And when those crises come, you can look back and think, I took time, I invested, and I'm much more prepared. So that's what I wanted to add, because it's such a strong foundation to take responsibility, that your brain is the one that God gave you, and you're stewarding that in your family. And the proverb says that with her own hands a woman can build her house or tear it down, right? And so as women, we have a great opportunity to build a foundation. And also Proverbs 22:3 says that the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple go on and suffer the consequences. So we invite you to be prudent and take refuge in the wisdom that we're sharing, and invest the time in preparing. And that is all I will say about that. That's a great foundation. And thank you, Wendy, for sharing. So we'll go on to number 2.
Number 2 is, again, start where you are. Take an inventory. I'm not talking about how many shoes are important too, but what do you have? You go back to that list that you made of the potential scenarios that could happen in your area, and then you're like, okay, this is what I know. I kind of need these things. I know how to do this. You've kind of thought it through. Now go through and take an inventory. Do you have blankets? Do you have boots to get you through the winter months if that's where you live? Do you have plywood to board up your windows if you live in hurricane country? Do you have an alternate source of cooking? If you do, like if you have a propane stove or a natural gas stove, then you're good. You just need to learn how to light it manually if you don't have electricity. We had a straight line wind storm come through here, probably 5 years ago. And whenever something like that happens and knocks out all the electricity and you can't get around, I get a lot of phone calls and text messages on how to do things. And one of my friends called me and she had a new baby and she said, I don't have electricity and I don't know how to, I can't warm up the baby's bottle. And I said, well, do you have a gas stove? Well, yeah. I said, all you need to do is put the bottle in the water on a pot and then just gently warm it up. And she's like, but how do I ignite it? And I said, well, you just use a match. Oh, that's so scary. Well, then practice with it. If igniting a gas stove is scary, if you don't have electricity, that's something that you practice right now so that it doesn't have to be scary. So remember those kinds of things. So take inventory of what you have, and how it applies to the scenarios that you've already written down. I mean, it doesn't start any freer. I don't know if that's the right word. More free and more simple than that. You're just starting right where you are and figuring out what it is you need and start placing it in a place where you can get to it.
Awesome. Yeah. And there's again, if you don't compare yourself with someone else and you just look at what you do have and you start with inventory, then you can build on that.
Yes.
You're not starting from nothing. I mean, I remember 23 years ago what it was like to start from nearly nothing. Mm-hmm. Jason and my parents had already gone back to Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Jason came and got me, and we had left a few of my favorite things, but not very much. We sent containers to Venezuela. And when we got back, we thought we were immensely blessed by cash gifts from family and friends. And we got back, and that evaporated from having to buy everything new, right? Mm-hmm. Everything from scratch, like having nothing we had to buy like a little window unit we lived in married student housing at the university. And so we had to buy air conditioning unit, and we had to buy all of, start from scratch, right? You have like no, all those little things, that you have in your bathroom in the kind of daily living things. And it was like, we would go to Walmart and it was just like hundreds of dollars just for, $5 and $3 and stuff. What seemed like times 1,000. And then anyway, so most people are not starting with nothing. You have something. And here, in the US, if you feel like, your budget is tight, the amazing thing is in most communities, you have either local thrift stores or like a Goodwill or some kind of ministry that, they raise funds. There are yard sales. Other countries don't have some of the secondhand market that we have here in the States. Right. And another thing is like, for example, Craigslist, and if you're on Facebook, there are places where it's like free. Mm-hmm. Like, even if you need totes for storage or shelves or things like that, you can set an alert and it costs you nothing. And you can set an alert for, like, let's say free wood shelves. Okay. I've done this. We repurpose stuff on our homestead all the time. And so it depends on where you live, obviously, but people are giving away things for free all the time. They're moving, they're remodeling, they're purging, or they had a yard sale and they have a lot of stuff left over and they just want to get it out of their way. They're done with it. Or someone in their family, they have like an estate sale, that kind of thing. There's a lot of opportunities. If you have that list, it'll be a lot easier for you to fulfill your list because you know now what you're looking for, instead of, like we were talking about, just either not having a list or copying what everybody else is doing. It's not going to work for you. But there's really no excuse, especially in the United States, to not get organized and get what you need. And, if you have Facebook or a Telegram or whatever, a group that you're a part of, and you have a specific need, you can even share it with people. If you want to start building your seed library, you could see if you could set up a seed exchange. Right. There really is absolutely no excuse for you to go without. But first you have to have a vision of what you need, and it's now. The time is now to get started, not in the middle of a crisis. You don't find people, you don't go looking for your solution and for people you can trust for practice in the middle of a crisis.
No.
The best time is now. Get, like that box of matches doesn't cost very much.
Right.
You need to buy it now and practice now when you're not stressed out that you're like your baby's crying and you have to make it work with the only one box of matches that you can find.
That's right.
That's not the situation you want to be in. That's not how you thrive.
That's right.
So
and I'd like to add also, as I have gone on this journey of my own from the, let's just say the beginning of being married, and I've learned this way of thinking, this way of life, and that's really just what it is for me now. One of the things I've noticed that when I identify a need, whether it's through a physical, I write down my list, or I just start thinking about it, or whatever it is, like I am going to need this. One of the things that I have found absolutely miraculous is how God will provide that for you. You can take it to him in prayer, and he will, it may not come through the channel you think, or maybe in the condition that you want exactly, but he will provide that for you because he wants you to be happy. And when he provides that for you, it is an opportunity for you to recognize his hand in your life and to give gratitude. And when you give gratitude, he likes to give even more gifts.
Yes, God, our creator and father, is a good God. And I think it is, there's so much depth, I think, to the scripture that talks about, like, without vision, without knowledge, people perish. And it's not just spiritually, it can be literally what we're talking to you about right now. I had the opportunity to interview a gentleman who's a veteran, and he has a company in Oregon, and they make rocket stoves. They're phenomenal. It's the company is Silverfire, and they got a testimonial or some feedback. Let's say he heard from a family in Texas during the storm that we had, the dark winter, and he had his rocket stove, and he had prepared, because again, you buy it before you need it, and then you're just there and you use it, right? Especially if you've been practicing. But unfortunately, if my memory serves me correctly, he said that this gentleman that had written in, his neighbor, he had an elderly neighbor, and the neighbor froze to death. He died in the storm. And like, who would want their elderly family to die in a winter storm because they didn't have the provision? So people do literally die for lack of vision, or lack of vision on the part of the caretakers, the younger generation taking taking priority, right, in providing things. And we just like, I don't really know which other ways to say this. It doesn't matter if it's inconceivable to you. Be, even if something doesn't happen to your family, being prepared. Or let's say maybe the next big crisis doesn't hit your family directly.
Right.
Like Wendy and I shared, there were parts in our city, in our area, that did not have the rolling blackout. It wasn't very many, right? So they were not as affected, right? So thank God for those families. They didn't have to go through. We did have a refrigerator on. We have 30 amps that we were running some electricity on, and it was on the grid. So we kind of are low grid. We're part, have a hybrid life right now. We've lived in different measures of off-grid and survival. But so during that time, we had this refrigerator, very costly refrigerator. I found the best, most energy efficient refrigerator. It was awesome. It was like my one non-negotiable thing I wanted when we moved in 9 years ago, whatever, into our tiny house. So guess what happened? A few weeks later or something, the board, like, it fried the board. It couldn't, it just couldn't, because I learned this in Venezuela. If you have too many, so these rolling blackouts are horrible for electronics. And so there's so much that could happen that you may or may not understand. And the more that you take advice from people like us that have gone before you, and the more you understand, like Wendy's saying, we don't live in your area more than likely, but get to know your area and what people historically have gone through in that area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe in the last 100 years, like what are the common things that could happen?
Right.
And then prepare for that.
Yeah.
What if your area is not hit, but then it, like your neighbor or your family that's not too far, then you can help them.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're blessed to be a blessing. And there's nothing to, in my opinion, you lose nothing by learning how to be more prepared.
Amen.
You become more confident. Like you were talking about, you have joy because, I mean, the joy of the Lord is our strength, but also having the wisdom to know that if we see in the wisdom in Proverbs 22:3, the prudent see danger and they take refuge, right? So having that ability to see, eyes to see and ears to hear what time it is, it's a good investment because we're being stewards of the revelation that we're having, and it can be a blessing to our family or our neighbors or family members, or like you said, sometimes you get a phone call. Well, if you don't prepare and you don't practice, who are you, you know, who can you bless? Who's going to be calling you? Like, what can you offer someone if they're calling you on the phone? They're like, I don't know what to do. And then you say, I don't either.
It's the truth. I mean, yeah, I know.
It's like, sorry. I mean, wouldn't you want to know some basic survival skills that just a couple of generations ago was just basic? Jason calls it like humanity 101.
Right?
You know, build their house, start a fire, you know, grow food, all that, take care of animals, all those things, understand the seasons and the sky, and all of those things are humanity 101. The more that you acquire that, the more relevant you're going to be in a time of crisis in helping other people. Because even like if you learn more about the kind of being able to tell things with the weather, okay, that may not be super relevant right now, but hey, guess what? If there's no internet, there's no phone, there's nothing, and you're like, you know, it's not going to rain. How do you know? Well, I mean, I've been spending the last 10 years learning the conditions and how it looked when farmers knew what they were dealing with. And so, again, the wisdom of the world is foolishness to God. And sometimes the wisdom we apply from the revelations we get from God look like foolishness to the world, but that the world is not who we're trying to please.
That's right.
And the world is not who we're going to give account to. That's so I'm sure that goes into 3, stewardship. Let's go on to number 3, how we steward our space.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about ways to prep for free. Well, one of the greatest ways is to get rid of the stuff that you already have that you're not using and sell it. Get rid of it. Bless somebody else's life with it. You may be able to sell it and earn a little money back so that you can then go buy the things that you need, or you just move it out of your way so it's no longer cluttering your mind. I mean, having free space is a really big deal. And if we are just holding on to shoes or clothes that don't fit us anymore, et cetera, they're not serving us. Give it to somebody who it will serve, and then go out, purchase the things that you need to add one at a time with the money maybe that you made selling on eBay or Facebook or wherever. Sometimes it's just meant to go to somebody else because God blessed you with it for a season and now it's somebody else's season for it. But declutter, get rid. It's okay. Release it. Bless it and release it.
I love that. Bless it and release it. And you know, and sometimes we change on our perspective, on our understanding of what we need.
Yeah.
You know, and establishing wants versus needs, and stewardship, really, like if this is on sale and it works for me now and I haven't used it in 6 months to a year, 3 or 5 or 10 years, whatever it is, then maybe that is not part of. But again, if you have already made your list, you can know does it fit into my future?
That's right.
Right? Because you don't really want to get rid of something and then turn around and go, oh, it was on my list that I wanted to learn canning, and then I just got rid of all my jars that I
Right.
bought. I've been collecting. And I will tell you, like 12 years ago, I remember Jason would buy, it was so crazy. We had a base in our, at that time we had this basement, and he had these canning jars. He just always wanted to learn this stuff. And when we were moving to Mexico, we got rid of everything, gave stuff away. So we had all these canning jars. Obviously, we needed to get rid of them. But again, what I'm saying is, don't just get rid of stuff to get rid of stuff. Check your list and then get rid of stuff.
Yeah.
The idea here is not to cause you more work. It's just to organize your assets, the things that you have for this next season of life. And if it doesn't fit, then bless somebody else with it. And I will tell you personally, if it's less than like $50 or $100, I just would much rather make a big bag and donate it. And sometimes I'll check with neighbors or with people that I know first. And then if not, I'll donate it to the local thrift store. And that gives me joy. And I don't have to worry about our people meal, on these websites and things like that, contacting you and things like that. And it just gives me joy. Like, I was blessed with this, whether it was free or paid, it doesn't really matter to me. And now I am blessed to give it away. And somebody else that will bless their preparedness journey. And what I do appreciate about thrift stores is that, I mean, they're doing the service of storing the things, but you can go and reacquire things, there. And sometimes I'll think, I'm not going to use this for probably 5 years. I'll just donate it, and I'll be like, if I ever need this again, I'll just go to the thrift store and I'll buy it, But I don't really think this is for the next the next season of my life, and let go. And like I said, God will provide if it's a true need, or you can ask, or you can borrow. It's okay. Not everything do we need something for every day. Not everything is like wool socks and, like those kinds of things. By the way, wool socks are, I don't know why I said wool socks, but that is one discovery that we made. Is just how awesome it is. And the idea of wool socks only being for winter is totally not true, that you can use them year round, and they actually are better for your skin and absorption and things even in the summer. Those are great things to have for long term.
Yeah.
It's a good investment. There's a brand that's American made that you can look into, and it's 100%. So it's an investment, but hey, there's just some things that you're going to understand. You're going to want good socks.
That's right.
For survival, you need good socks and good shoes, and a good hat and, some really good work clothes and things like that. So let's get into number 4, which is, we're all of these things have to do with strategic stewardship, I believe.
I agree with that. I like the way you say that. Number 4 is identify skills you have, identify skills you need and want to develop. You can learn just about anything you want to learn on the internet these days, whether it's in blog posts or YouTube videos, wherever. If you want to, I learned how to make soap by watching YouTube videos. I just watched them over and over and over again. And then I started making soap. I collected all the stuff I needed. And then I just started making soap. And that's kind of an addictive skill to have, actually. It's super fun, creative. It's awesome. But I've learned so many things. I learned how to butcher a chicken by watching YouTube videos, because we grew our own chickens last year and we processed them ourselves. We have the equipment to process them, but I wasn't exactly sure how to break up a chicken. Well, I learned how to break up a chicken. I mean, and now, so if I have chickens, in my freezer and whatnot. But one of the things I tell people, one of the ways, if there are food shortages happening, which it seems like there is, it's cheaper to buy a whole chicken than it is to buy the legs or the breast individually. So buy the whole chicken and learn how to break it up. Well, that's a great way to save money and learn how to use this chicken in lots of different ways. So that's a skill to have. You have the skill. I also find that when you develop skills, it's super fun in the moment to develop them, and you get to the point where you kind of exhausted it, unless you want to go on and make money using the skill, which is, I think, amazing. But it's always there when you need it. A skill is always there when you need it. You may need to dust it off a little bit depending on what the thing is. Like we had processed chickens a few years ago, but I just forgot how to cut the chicken up the right way. So I just brushed up on with some YouTube videos, and then we were able to do that no problem. So having those things, I cannot express to you how important skills are. I once read a story about Germany after World War II, and they were just, it was just devastated. There was no food, there was no money, there was nothing. People were starving. And this man, I read the story that this man took, I think he had a wagon or a bicycle, I don't remember. And the last thing that they owned of any value was his wife's wedding ring. I think it was just her band. And he went out looking for food for their family. And so he went way out into the country and he found a farmhouse, and it was an older couple. And he said, I need food for my family. Do you have anything? Here's this ring. And they said, we don't need the ring, but do you know how to fix things? Do you know carpentry work, that type of thing? He goes, oh yeah, I know how to do that. They said, we have a sack of potatoes for you. We have some work around the farm that needs to be done, and you can have these potatoes. And so because he had the skills of knowing how to be a handyman or carpentry or whatever it was, he was able to feed his family. And I've always said to my children, I don't care who you are. If you know how to work hard and you have the skills to back it up, you will never lack for a job of some sort. And so the more skills you develop, the more valuable you are to yourself, to your family, and to others. Because if you can put the effort, like what Aurora has been saying about taking care of yourself, putting that effort and that investment in you, it's called protecting the asset. You're protecting yourself. You're number one. You are the asset. Everybody is the asset. It's not a boastful term, but if you are number one, the asset, then your investment into you, whether it's self-care by getting your toes done or by learning a skill or serving somebody else in that place, then you are going to benefit the whole world the way you are able to serve other people. So you can go to libraries, you can find a mentor. Mentors are the very best. I love mentoring people who want to learn. It's exciting to deliver to them and to teach them what it is they want to learn and encourage them, because you can learn anything. You can absolutely learn anything in this world these days.
I love that. I mean, there's such good wisdom, Wendy. And I will say, you reminded me, we've been talking about how to get a lot more about how to get away from the consumeristic mindset, right? Because consumers expect to receive and investors expect to produce, right? So let's talk to investors here for a minute, because what you were talking about is, so if you have, you and I have invested quite heavily in ourselves, our family, our journey to be the most resilient that we can be, right? Mm-hmm. And I will tell you that when we moved out here, all we knew to want, like our vision only got us to wanting to be resilient. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had, so I was part of this international consulting firm, and I had a fellow coach tell me, she said, sometimes though, resilience, it just means that you survived. Mm-hmm. There's more than just surviving.
That's right.
Right. So you're resilient. You made it. And now what? Right. So it's not. And so after that, I gave a lot of thought, and one of the progressions for the Sustainable Pioneering podcast that I came up with after that is survival. So that's first, resilience, and then freedom. And how can you really have true freedom is to just be able to learn to not just survive, but to thrive.
Yes.
And what I came to also realize is that, in this world full of uncertainty that we live in right now, I believe that the best way to learn how to survive is to first learn how to thrive living off the grid. Because if you can live off the grid, and especially if you practice in several different environments and locations and situations, then you can adjust the dial, right, on what you want to prepare for and start building towards for a more permanent lifestyle, like what you and I are talking about. It is a lifestyle. Like
It is.
this is not something that I just talk, I just take a break from my life and talk a little bit, but my life is about survival, resilience, and freedom, and how to bring people
Yeah.
into that ecosystem. First, they got to learn how to survive. There's no
Right.
thriving if you didn't make it. You don't know how to think. How are you
Yeah.
going to do that? But I will tell you, I had the opportunity to hear Coach Bill Barron. He is a coach. For those of you who are in the entrepreneurial world and digital entrepreneurship and all of that, you may have heard of Bill Barron. But I had the opportunity to be on a live call with him, and he shared this quote, and it just stuck with me, and I share it with anyone that will listen, because right now I'm not opposed to people investing in different outfits or different. Oh my goodness, that startled me. My neighbors are practicing their stuff. Sorry about that, y'all. Okay, this is live. Okay, this is raw. So hopefully they will not continue to do that, because it does make me jumpy. But I'm trying a new place to. There they go. I'm trying a new place to broadcast, because this weather is doing crazy things to our Wi-Fi. But so what I wanted to share is also there are different things you could be investing in, and hopefully you can hear me past the noise. But there's different things you can be investing in, and don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Like if you're doing awesome investing in real estate, or you're doing awesome investing in crypto, or you're doing awesome investing in whatever other thing that you have found, what we're telling you here is there's also you, okay? And maybe you invested in learning how to be a good investor for financial matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have health, you have finances, and you have relationships.
Right.
And the quote that Bill shared is this: you are the last safe investment. In a world full of uncertainty, investing in mastery is something you can control. You
Yep.
are in complete control of how much effort and focus you put into getting to the next level of mastery. Oh goodness, this doesn't really happen either. We've got a lot of new things. So you can control how much focus and attention you put into mastering that skill, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And learning to be masterful is one of the most important skills that you can learn. And that's what Wendy was saying. If you there's this saying that I don't appreciate about being a jack of all trades and master of none.
Yeah.
Someone said, because we believe in becoming Renaissance men, Renaissance people. And so I heard someone say recently that they were a jack of all trades and master of some. And I love that, because
Like that.
Lisa and I have a lot of interests.
Right.
And the things that we really care about, we want to become masterful. Like
Yes.
the things that we're really passionate about, we're not just going to hand it off to somebody else. We want to continue to learn and be more masterful, more skilled at that.
Right.
And I will share with you a personal story about the gold ring. My uncle is a vet, and he's thriving in Venezuela in crazy times as this, because people want to take care of their animals. That's a comfort, right? And I asked him, I call him Theo, but I asked him, when people come to you, and because something you may or may not know is that in Venezuela right now, the currency are American cash dollars. I just want you to wrap your head around the fact that we are in North America, Canada, the United States of Mexico, North America. Then there's Central America, and then there's South America. We're not even connected by land. So somehow, I don't remember what year it took over, but I can't remember what year it was. Cash American dollars became the currency.
Wow.
I'm not really sure, and it's just a crazy thing. How do people get access to cash American dollars? But there's
Right.
this whole thing, and that's the form of payment because the Bolivar, which is our national currency, years ago, I think it was like 10 years ago or 11 years ago, it stopped having value in the international market. So we
Oh,
used to be able to trade, like when we traveled to Venezuela, we took dollars and
right.
went back and forth. No, that ended. Okay, so if you have bolivares, they're just worthless, and they're pretty much worthless in Venezuela too.
Right.
The devaluation, I don't know if it's like 1,000%. I don't know exactly, but for example, like if you had a pension that was $5,000, now you get $5, like
Mm-hmm.
$5. Your 5,000 can are kind of like $5, but those $5 only really buy you 50 cents worth of something. So, you know, it's inconceivable. But I asked my uncle, do you barter? And he said, no, I'm
Mm.
not really interested in that.
Oh.
And so he said that he's had a couple of people that bring like their ring, a gold ring. And he just said to me, personally, he just said, I would rather just help them if
Hmm.
I'm able, than to take their gold jewelry. I
Right.
don't need their gold jewelry. And so that's
Right.
what I say to people. You can invest in, for example, silver, and you
Yeah.
can invest in gold, and you can invest in whatever, all the different things that you think. There's people that collect different things that they feel are important for those
Mhm.
times. But really, if nobody wants that, for example, if you come to me with something I don't use, I don't want to own, I have no use for,
Right.
I'll help you if I can. But if I have no interest and I have to sell it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not currency that is relevant to me.
Right.
And
Right.
so you
That's
have
true.
to be aware of that. And
Mm.
what I share with people is, in relation to this, is two things. One is regarding your currency. If you're going to be investing in things or trying to have like alternative different currencies and such, be prepared. It's more important really to invest in the things you feel like you're going to need than to have a bunch of cash or coins or whatever other things, because there's going to be a lot of people that don't want that.
That's true.
They're
Yeah.
not, however, skills. So
Yeah.
I had one of our students, I shared with them, I said, look, for what you're doing right now in your career and where you say you want to be, if you invest in the skill sets that are going to get you there, that is worth more than money. That's becoming
100%.
increasingly less valuable
100%.
because you're working against yourself just to make it.
Yeah.
I believe that seeds and skills are going to be the currency of the future.
Yeah. Food.
So
Yeah.
I totally agree. I just wanted to kind of add to you, kind of from the future, which is
Right. Right.
future, for the future today. That I had this conversation with my uncle a couple
Yeah.
of months ago. Um, do not be deceived into thinking there is a one size fits all approach. Get to know the climate of your area. If
Yep.
you're going to stay in your area, if your idea is to stay in your area, get to know what people value in that area. What are
Right.
some of the skills that are most sought out? But really being handy, it's fantastic.
Right.
Growing food. If you know nothing about growing food, I want to share with you what it's like to start where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Jason and I met 24 plus years ago. He told me he wanted to be self-sustainable, and all the things that we're still working on, right? Trying to be more masterful at every area. Again, we teach 12 pillars. It's not that simple to become a master at this with no previous experience. This is not how we grew up. But we were living as expats in Mexico, and we had not really done any gardening. And Jason decided it's our time right now. And so he decided he wanted these earth boxes. Well, they wouldn't ship them to Mexico because of the agricultural limitations.
Mm.
So we had sold or given away all of our power tools. We didn't move those with us.
Right.
And so Jason decided, okay, Jason is very skilled with power tools, but we weren't going to reinvest in power tools for this little gardening project. So And if y'all reach out to me, I'll share pictures, or maybe I'll share them in another broadcast. But this is what he ended up doing. In the town where we lived in Mexico, they did have a Home Depot. So he went and bought a tub and he repurposed it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he used like a little hand saw back to, just really basic. He didn't have a drill, so he used a screwdriver and he heated it up with a gas stove and put the hose in there. And we had the most beautiful tomatoes that year, and it was just so awesome and so rewarding. Probably the best tomatoes we've ever grown. What I mean, we gave a lot of attention to those few plants that we were stewarding. We had a lot more resources when we lived in the States, but we did not have our focus and attention. Sometimes when you get away and you make that list and you go, the time is now, and whatever it takes, if it's in a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket, if it's in an old container, yogurt container, you can grow herbs in that. Yeah. There's so much you can do, and there's really no excuse. If it's
there really isn't.
Do not delay. We want to encourage you to just get alone, make a list. I'm going to put the link to joyfulprayer.com here. And also, as we close, I do want to tell you that I want to show you also that Wendi has a Facebook group. And if you are on Facebook, her group is called Prepare Every Needful Thing. Mm-hmm. And if that is of interest to you, and again, if Facebook is something that you use, then you can go there, and there are, there's conversation happening. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a small enough group right now that there's, more interaction with Wendi. And again, I put the link. It's joyful. Let's see, what did you say the link was?
For the Facebook group, the link directly to the Facebook group is joyfulprepgroup.com.
Okay, and I do have that in the description of this video. So you have both of the links to Wendi's blog. And one last thing that I want to ask you to do, if you were blessed by this broadcast, reach out, comment, and let us know what you did do. What did you do? I mean, we're planting a seed in hopefully your fertile ground of your heart to take action, to implement. Comment and let us know, what did you do with what we invested in you, what we sowed into your family, to help you be empowered to do things that are going to make a difference, so you can be a lighthouse to your family, an example, a legacy to, if you have children, to your family of doing with what you have, and be in a position to help others around you, or be in a position to not just outfit your home, but if you have a place in another state or in another country that you also go to, then you can duplicate that, because wherever you go, that wisdom goes with you, and you can apply it. And the most basic and most awesome preparedness skills that Wendi and I have learned, we can take them wherever we go. Right. And that is the value of learning things at the basic level, and to have skills, not just products. Do not rely on products to solve problems for you.
I agree.
Learn as much as you can to go back to the raw source, to start with that very basic thing. And I shared with my best friend, I said, go right now, this was months ago, but I said, go buy you some extra baking soda. I said, I can show you dozens of ways to use it and solve a lot of problems, but I don't know how to teach you how to make baking soda. I can help you make baking powder out of baking soda. I can all things, but I'm like, baking soda is not something I know how to make. It's like, go to the source. So investing things, in learning things that have to do with the raw materials, that if you're able to get your hand on that, barter or trade your skill sets for those raw materials, then you can do so much. And you give value to those things instead of having to pay for things to be prepared for you. And that's really what came to mind, in regards to that. Do you have anything else, Wendi, as we close, that, any last thoughts for people that have had this in their mind for a while, and they just are feeling stuck or not confident? Maybe a little fear has crept in that they're not going to measure up. They're not going to be able to do all the things.
Well, the world is swirling around us, right? The wind, the billows. We're taught we learn about. We have to be built on the rock, um, so that we can be prepared for these things that are. Um, and we want peace in our lives, and it's hard to have peace when so much craziness is going around us. I have peace. I don't have like I doubt I have not doubt, but I have certain things that I don't know how it's going to work out, but I have the peace that I need to know that when you were talking about how we can take our skills wherever, I was thinking I really could walk out of this house with me and my family. I'd like some clothes, whatever, and I can move somewhere with nothing, and we could figure it out. And I could go to thrift stores and I could find canners or jars. I know how to make friends, and I would be able to start all over. And within, figuring out the new area, I could start canning food or finding whatever I need without missing a beat. We're going to move to Florida, and up here in New Jersey, it's the Garden State for a reason, because I have a butternut squash farm across the street from me, literally, and so I have all this bounteous food and fruit, and I have a farmer who grows his own beef, so I have all these people in place. And my one biggest concern is moving down to Florida, and I'm going to have to find those people again. But I still have a sense of peace because I know God will provide that for me, because I know how to look for it, and I know what to do with it once I find it. And I'm willing to work for it. I had my sister once said something. I said something about losing weight one time, and I said, yeah, but I just kind of sit around or whatever. She's like, girl, you got to give God something to work with. I always thought that was so funny, because she's right. If I sit on the couch, he can't he could, I guess, make me thin, skinny, whatever, but I got to go walk, or I've got to lift weights, or I have to stop eating a cake or whatever it is, so he can make the miracle in me. And the same comes with being prepared. You've got to put something out there, and it may be teeny tiny. It may be so little that you think it's nothing, but I can guarantee you that God will create something, whether it begins to sprout in your soul, this desire to live this way, you will see success. And if you devote that to him, the peace will come the way you need the peace to come. And there is no doubt in my mind, I stand firm in that. Anything you give to him, he will magnify and enable you to grow and to become.
That's awesome. Thank you, Wendy, for sharing. And, I've been thinking a lot about in Revelation, I believe it's 12:11. I'll put myself on the spot here, but I was reading it earlier today, where it talks about how in the end we will defeat, our two greatest weapons are by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And if we don't practice being grateful for the things and the miracles that God does in our life every single day, we wake up alive and we have healthy lungs to breathe and a clear mind to think, right? That makes me really think about just how much what were the things that we think about privately, how that in the end, right, to just be on the shadow of a doubt who God is and who we are in him, because he created us.
Yes.
And to be able to stand until the end. And that's really why we do what we do, to be a light, and to, if there were to be a target, to make ourselves a hard target, to be resilient. And, I think about recently, I really have given a lot of thought about what makes a person a pioneer, like what sets pioneers apart. And I did a video on this, but when you were sharing that, we shared about vision. And there's three things that I believe in this pioneering journey. It's like three stages. And the first stage is, having the conviction. And we can't transfer that to you who are watching, okay? The conviction has to come from within. resilience comes from within because you want it and you work for it. Like you said, you're willing to do whatever it takes to work on it. And so there's conviction. And then when you have that, you lock in your focus and your attention into that conviction, you make your list and you have your vision, God will bless that. One of the things also that I learned from Craig Hill is he talks about having, there's this wonderful video he was interviewing on Sid Roth, and he talked about the concept and the principles of having 5 jars. And this is financial stewardship. But one of them is the investing jar. And he shared a story of he didn't really have an investing jar years ago. And he felt convicted that, God allowed him to think about the fact that if he has an investment jar that has, or no investment jar, and you have 0, and God wants to bless him 1,000 times, 1,000 times 0 is always 0. And if God wants to bless you because of your stewardship and you have no skills, 0. 0. And so what we do with what we have from the inside out, if God wants to bless it and multiply it, it's going to be on the measure of what we have.
Right.
All the miracles of multiplication were based on something, right?
Yeah,
So whether
that's true.
3 or 5 loaves, or there was always, what do you have? What do you have in your hands? And I mentioned my best friend earlier. So what I've started doing, I'm going to take my earring off. What I've started doing is she sent me these earrings, and I don't know if you can see, but it's a penny that was crushed by a train. Have you ever done that, where you put a penny on a train track, flattens it? So these are crushed pennies, and they made an earring. And I always think about the saying that so many people have done so much more with so much less. I mean, what is a penny? You can pick a penny up just about anywhere. You can even go to a gas station and get 2 pennies, and there you have, and then you can just get a little bit of wire, make earrings, and probably sell the earrings. If you sell them like for crafts, you could sell them for like $15, right? And you multiplied it. Well, where are you going to get a 15 to, you take 5 cents and you turn them into $15. That's an incredible return because your skills are what create the value, right? And so, like, that's what we were talking about earlier. If you invest in yourself, the return is so much greater than anything the market is doing. I know crypto is hot and everything, and I'm not against it, but don't invest in something else before you invest in yourself. In the areas where you have the conviction that it's a non-negotiable skill,
right?
It's not just a nice to have skill. It's not just a sort of, sexy skill or whatever. It's like, it is something that is indispensable. You have to have it, and you invest in that before you go off, because like we said, some financial things may happen to where you don't have those awesome returns available to you, but you have you'll have you to be dealing with and to have to feed. And if you have family and things, then you have that responsibility. And so that's really what I wanted as far as my comments to close with. Thank you so much, Wendy, for your generous visit amidst this crazy move, preparing to leave your state that you're comfortable with. And, I love that you share that you have peace. One of the things I realized is that uncertainty is a breeding ground for fear, but the more that we work on ourselves and allow ourselves to grow, the less uncertainty that we face, because we have vision, we have wisdom, and things are not so uncertain all the time. Not everything in our lives has to be driven by uncertainty, and so we don't have that fear that drives us, right? Instead of making fear-based choices and decisions, we make faith-based choices and decisions.
That's right.
We have confidence.
Very good.
And, and so we hope that you have the best transition with this move, and it's as smooth as possible, and that you can reap the benefits of having been a good neighbor, and in your area, that you can go and reap the benefits of what you have sown in your community, that you can find that where you're going for. That is our thoughts here. What I would like to bless you with, and we pray for you that your family will just feel at home. The Lord's prepared a way for you to be there and open the doors for you to be there, and that you will just feel at home and be able to settle because you're losing a little bit of momentum here, right? That you'll be able to get on the fast track and get rolling in your new place, and that
Thank you.
you'll be able to make some new friends and strategic partnerships there in your community before you need it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
time before you need it. And so the way that I always like to end broadcast, if you're watching right now and you're new to us, I always like to leave everyone with a blessing. If you're just tuning in right now, remember you can go back and watch it, do a playback speed of 2x so it can be quick, and check out the links in the description below. But the blessing for you is, may the Lord bless you, keep you, shine his face towards you, be gracious unto you, turn his countenance towards you, and give you shalom, peace. And in Hebrew, Yevarechecha Yehovah v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Yehovah panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Yehovah panav elecha, v'yasem laha shalom.